morning, church. Today, I'm going to ask you only two things. I don't have very many points. However, there are things that you can write down, and I do encourage you to write them down. But my first point and question that I want you to ponder as we're going through this is, what are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? So like I said, today we're going to look at two different lives in two different times. It's good to see you. It's good to see all of you. First, we're going to look at Daniel. So if you want, you can turn to Daniel. Again, it was chapter 6. So Daniel is still, I don't have my pages might be different from yours. Chapter 6. I think that when we're looking at Daniel, right now specifically, I'm reading about Daniel in the lion's den. And we all know that story, right? We've heard it many times. Whether you've gone through church or not, I think it's almost common knowledge that, Daniel was the one who was thrown into the lion's den. But when we look at his history, I think it's helpful to have some context, right? The Babylonians took over, right? The Jews, they were conquered. And they asked for men of nobility to come into their court so they could raise them, change them, and have them go back out into the Jewish lands and essentially convert everybody to what they believed. So we know we have Daniel and 3 other men, which I know by them, not by their real names, unfortunately, is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and those are their changed names. And they were chosen. They were of nobility. They were from the royal families. They were handsome. They were strong in mind and physique. And the first things that I just said that the Babylonians did is they changed their names. They wanted to strip them and kind of get rid of their culture, right? And we know that names are very important to us, especially when it comes to Jesus. And the next thing that they did was to feed them of the royal food, the wine and, the meat. And Daniel knew that they couldn't eat it because it was against the law of God, right? They were only supposed to eat things that were clean, that were kosher. Knowing this, Daniel didn't want to defile himself, so he asked permission. And in doing so, the guard had some reluctance because he said that the king would be furious and basically have his head. And Daniel said, if there is any way that we could just eat vegetables, please give it to us. Test us. Give us 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, then please judge us accordingly. And he did. And at the end of 10 days, right, they looked better than all the other men that were there. And so they were granted to eat lawfully under God, under this reign. And after that, God blessed them. He blessed Daniel specifically with visions and the ability to interpret. And he also blessed the other men as well. And so that brings us to where we are in this story, how Daniel was elevated through Christ, right? Through his obedience to God, even though there were scary circumstances. Right now, I'm going to put that on hold, and we're going to go back to Luke. And it's Luke 22:31. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. Now, if you notice when you're reading, Jesus did not say Peter, Peter. At this point in the story, Jesus had already changed Simon's name to Peter. But right now, where they're at is right before Jesus was going to die on the cross, right? And he tells Peter that he's going to deny him. And so Jesus looks at him and he says, Simon, Simon. So now we both have name changes in both stories. Daniel's name was changed, and so was Peter's. Daniel means God is my judge. His name was changed to Belteshazzar, which means Baal protects him. Baal was their god. Peter means rock or stone, right? Something solid. And Simon means to listen or to hear. The world changed Daniel's name, and Jesus changed Peter's. So I want to know what you identify with, who the world says you are, or who God says you are. Simon, Simon. Even though Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter, Jesus in that moment was speaking to Peter's flesh. Simon. In Romans 8:5, I'm going to read from there very quickly. You don't have to turn to it, only if you want to. There we go. Those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what that nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind of a sinful man is death, but the mind controlled by the Spirit is life and peace. And we've been told this for many times, that there is a war going on inside of us between our spirit and our flesh. And that is what Jesus was speaking to, was Peter's flesh. So who is Simon going to listen to? Is he going to listen to his spirit, or is he going to listen to his flesh? Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he may sift you like wheat. Satan did not demand Peter, he demanded Simon. When we look at Daniel thus far, we see that he is in a constant battle, but so is Peter. And you might presume that Simon's battle is a little bit more dignified because these people are actually trying to kill him. Like, he's in plenty of battles where they're trying to dismantle where God has elevated him to. And Peter's only battle is himself. But whether it's spiritual or physical, they were both fighting for their lives. And the physical is just as demanding as the spiritual. Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you and sift you like wheat. Satan is demanding to have you, and he's demanding you by your name. He is not calling you by your spirit, but by your flesh. But if there is no demand, no tear at your heart, Satan does not bother with your name because he already has you. Let's turn back to Daniel 6. I'm going to read at verse 5. I'll give you a second. Finally, these men said, We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God. The law of his God. The law of our God. Satan wants to trap you in the law or promise of God unless you have already trapped yourself. And I know that sounds kind of funny. What does it mean to trap somebody in a promise? A promise is supposed to be something that's hopeful, not hindering. But God promises us many things. And I think as someone of flesh, I know I would think, and I have thought, God, you promised to deliver me from my enemies. You said that you would avenge me and that you would bring me justice. These are your words, and yet I don't see actions from them. Where are you? But Satan wants you to focus on what you think is right and what you assume lacks in your life. Because when that happens, God himself is not enough for you. You forget that God is the law and God is the promise. He is the fulfillment. He is the justice, and you forget God. So you take it upon yourself, and I'm speaking for myself and about myself. You scheme and you lie and you judge. You condemn. And maybe you're right. Everything you're feeling, you're discerning, you're seeing, you're experiencing, you're right. You're absolutely right. That you have that righteous anger that God talks about, that you feel that you need to walk upon. And there is a time for that, but that is not the only way to battle. What did Daniel do? He prayed. I'm going to read it again in Daniel. Daniel 6, 10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. How did they know what Daniel was going to do? Because Daniel has a history, just like we all do. He continued to show faithfulness to God no matter the circumstances, even when it seemed wrong to others. Like, I don't doubt that people in Daniel's community, in his close, tight-knit community, maybe some did, maybe some didn't. And I think that we all take these parts of people that sometimes we're like, yeah, like you just go to God. And other times we're like, why are you being so stupid? Just give in. Just give up. It's okay. Let them have the win. But Daniel didn't do that. He could have closed the windows, but he didn't do that. He could have hid in prayer, but he didn't do that. He did what he always did. He went up there with the windows open and he prayed. And what about Peter's history? As Simon. Satan is going to use your history with or without God to trap you in the eyes of others. Now with Daniel, there's 2 perspectives going on. There's the admin, and then there's Daniel. To the admin, Daniel was nothing more than a Jew rising up in their world, one that they felt he did not deserve. And they just wanted to keep him and put him back in his place. And they would do anything to keep him there. But again, what did Daniel do? He went and he prayed. And on that way to his home, after he heard about the decree, I can't imagine the thoughts that he would have. I know the thoughts that I would have. And maybe Daniel was stronger in faith than I was. I mean, clearly it shows that he is, and that is something that I would aspire to. But as flesh, I know that I would think, and these are my projected thoughts, Lord, I have done all the right things. I've continued to stay faithful to you, even when they stripped me of my life, my name. And now they want to take it. Why do you continue to allow me to fall? Over and over, you see what they do. You know who they are. You know what they've done. You said that you are the God of justice, and yet they continue to live and breathe and rise, and I fall. I'm going to read Daniel 7 through 11. Still on chapter 6. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce that decree to anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days except to you. I think it's funny how there's a time frame on it. Not like this is going to be forever, even though he's a king and that would be more likely. They just needed time. Satan just gives you time to fall, to trap you. O king shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree and put it into writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the laws of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. And now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. That's the thing, is the enemy, he's not going to do it alone. He's going to take people that you know. He's going to take people that are on your level. Maybe that you even know more than, or that are above rank in. And he's going to use those people to watch you fall. Daniel could have went to the king. I mean, he was going to use Daniel he was going to put him over everything. He had favor in his eyes. And maybe there was something that the king could have done, even though it says in writing that it can't be repealed. He could have pleaded, just like they did, how they went to the king of their land, but Daniel went to the king of all. So where do you go to? What perspective are you taking? And what are you fighting for? Let's turn back to Luke 22:61. Luke chapter 22, verse 61. So we're going to go a little bit past what we already read. It's Luke 22, verse 61. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered. And I'm going to stop there. Peter remembered. Because we know what happened after. This was right after he denied him. I can't imagine what that feels like. To stand up to Jesus himself and say, I would never deny you. And then you do it. And he looks at you. You are looking in his face. But really, how many times have we actually denied Jesus ourselves? You might say never because you're thinking that you didn't deny him the way that Peter did out loud. When somebody said, do you know Jesus? And he was like, no, I don't know that man. But just because you don't deny him like Peter doesn't mean that you have not denied him. Every time you lean on yourself before God, you are denying him. In Proverbs 14:12, it says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. But you might think it's not that serious. Not in the way that Peter's was. But it is. You are actively denying his power and will in your life. But it's not the same, but it is. Peter wept. But he didn't give up. But maybe he did give up a little bit, right? Because he went back to fishing. But he didn't stop believing. But maybe he had faltered in his faith and fell to the lowest point that he's ever been in his walk. But then he saw Jesus. Not only did he see him, he yelled to him, he jumped out of the boat. And he ran. He ran to Jesus. And when Peter talked with Jesus, Jesus opened up his heart. And then he rose. Then he rose. But why? Because he talked with Jesus. And is that not what prayer is? Talking to Jesus? And you might think, well, it's not the same. He saw him face to face. I don't get to see Jesus face to face. Neither did Daniel. And he still was thrown into the lion's den. And yet he still had faith. And he still prayed. And he still asked for help. In James 4:8, it says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And that is what Daniel did. God sent an angel and shut the mouths of those lions. Just because God allows you to fall, doesn't mean he isn't fighting for you. In fact, he will use unbelievers to fight for you in his glory. Let's go back to Daniel. We're going to read in Daniel, it's chapter 6, starting at verse 13. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed, and he was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to the king and said to him, Remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you." That's a prayer. That's a prayer. He may not have got on his knees and bowed his head and closed his eyes. That's a prayer. He spoke it into existence. Amen. And a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that nation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. He fasted for Daniel, and he doesn't even believe in God. So what did Jesus do for Peter? Where is Peter's help? Let's go back and read. Luke 22:32. But I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Not only did he pray for Peter, he prophesied over him. Jesus knew that he was going to fall. He knew he was going to deny him, and he prayed for him anyway, and he prophesied over his life. He didn't say, if you turn again. He said, when. When. God allowed Daniel to be fed to the lions, and still Daniel believed, and still God shut the mouths of those lions. Even in their pain and their hurt, they still chose to run and to pray. They still chose God. And that is how they chose to fight, because they weren't fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for Christ. So what are you fighting for? There's a bigger calling in their lives beyond the pain, beyond the disappointment, beyond the circumstances, just as there is in your life, beyond your pain, beyond your circumstances, beyond your disappointment. So I ask you again, what are you fighting for, and how are you fighting for it? When I think about myself, and what I'm fighting for, I tell this to my daughter all the time. She asks, "Mom, do you love me?" And I say, "Yes." And she says, "How much do you love me?" And I say, "With all my heart." "But do you love God more than me?" "Yes." Because when I do that, not only am I fighting for myself, I'm fighting for you. I can't love her unless I put God first. I can't love myself unless I put God first. So not only am I fighting for me and her, I'm fighting for my mom and my sister and my cousin and my nieces and my nephews. I'm fighting for the youth that are here, because it's not just about me or my kid. It goes beyond that. And I can't be selfish in my thinking or small-minded. that even if I'm brought to the lowest and I am being fed to lions, I know that God will shut their mouths. The thing is, it's not about me or where I'm at. It's not about man. It's about what God can do through man. I can't fight in the way that I've done before. It has to be through prayer. And my biggest example of that, of what that looks like, to not give up, to continue to move forward, that's my brother. Again, not to glorify man, but what God can do through man. He was in his teens, going into his 20s, and he didn't give up. He wanted to, and he may have fallen many times along the way. But when everybody else did, give up, walk away, they were angry, and they were right to be. He went back to God. I know you miss your brother. I know that. I didn't have a relationship with mine for like 8 years. But the thing is, we don't have the same story, but we do have the same God. And as long as you keep going, you might be that person to change the history of your family. God has put a calling on all of your lives. And you all have battles that you are struggling through. And I don't know where you're at in your battles, but it's never too late, and you've never gone too low, because God will go with you in those steps. And what you say today will impact what happens 20 years from now, 5 years from now. When I was in labor with my daughter, there was a song that I wanted to be played. And so I asked my mom or my sister to find it, and they played it for me. And I didn't realize at that time what I was singing. The song is called Breathe. And I really liked it because it reminded me to breathe, because I was in a lot of pain. and I wanted to do it as naturally as possible. I didn't realize that I was prophesying over my life. I didn't realize that what I was asking God for. And if I did, I don't think at that time that I would have had strength to do it. Knowing what was to come and how it was going to come and how it was going to happen, I would have said, Lord, there has to be another way. I would have tried to have pleaded my way out of it. But thankfully, God knows better than we do, and He has better reason than we have. That He made it so that our words are powerful in His strength. If you don't mind turning off the lights for me. Thank you. I want you, this is more for me, less for the atmosphere. um, I want you to sing this song with me because I believe that if what I said 6 years ago, knowing what God has done through that step that I chose to make without even knowing any better and seeing the way that He has moved through my life, I know that by you praying that here today, God will also move through your lives. Whether it's for yourself or for others, that you're going to take it upon yourself today to prophesy over the healing that's going to come. And that's already happening. And the words are very easy. It's very repetitive. And you can choose to sing it with me or meditate on it. But I really want you to take it in and feel His presence and know that He is there and know that this is just the beginning, that it's not an end. So it's called Breathe by the Brilliance. And I didn't want the band to play because I really just wanted to meditate on these words together. I mean, even if I just sing it and you don't, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I think it's important to say. And I will try not to cry through it. Breathe. Breathe on me now. Open your mouth and speak the word that heals this broken ground. Say what you will. Show us your will as we breathe in the very breath of God. Oh, Spirit of God, here with us now, giving us life again. Breathe, breathe on me now. Fill us with your love. Send us with your power, Spirit of God. Breathe, breathe on me now. Open your mouth and speak the word that heals this broken ground. Say what you will. Show us your will as we breathe in the very breath of God. Oh, Spirit of God, here with us now, giving us life again. Breathe, breathe on me now. Fill us with your love. Send us with your power, Spirit of God. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for what is here, God. I thank you for the healing that has taken place. I thank you for your word over their lives, over our lives. I thank you for shutting the mouths of the lions. I thank you for delivering us from ourselves. I thank you for us, for helping us open up our eyes and our hearts and our minds to you, that there is a bigger picture than what we are going through, that is just a small portion of your plan, God, and that what we do here sets us up for you and your glory for the rest of our lives until we meet you, Lord. And that is what we are reaching for, is to be unified with you in heaven and to bring those who we know with us, God, and those who we don't know. And that the impact that we can make now, that you have the power to make those ripples go further and further and far beyond our reach or our comprehension, God, that the purpose that you have set on each one of these people that are in here means something, that they are important, that they are loved. And even if they have fallen in their faith, or are struggling with it, or don't know how to go deeper, or maybe they want to believe but they don't know how, that today is the day that they make that change. Today is the day that they turn to you and say, no, Lord, I will walk with you. You will be my encouragement. You will be my path forward. I can't lean on myself anymore. I can't fight the way that I did before. It has to be through you, so that no one can deny that you are God. So I thank you for allowing me to fall, for stripping me of my old name, for stripping me of the things that weighed me down. I can no longer fight in fear, God, but fight in hopefulness in you. You are our living hope, and that is all that matters. More than our children, more than our family, more than ourselves or our friends or our homes or pets, more than all these materialistic things that we like to put above you, that you matter more because it came from you. And if something so wonderful like a child can come from you, that I can come from you, how much more, Lord, do you have waiting for us if we only choose you daily? I thank you, Lord. I thank you for this time. I thank you for your will, that you have more faith in us than we do in ourselves, that you pray for us and you prophesy over our lives. I thank you, God. And I just thank you that we're able to come together in agreement under you, maybe not with each other, but under you we are unified. That you are the one who covers all, who gives peace to all. Thank you, Lord, for this time. Thank you for this word today, Lord. And as we get up and go back to our lives, that we take you with us, that we remember you and every step that we take today, and that we talk to you more and open up more to you. And even if we can't see it, that remember what you have done for others and what you're going to do for us. That we don't have to see the vision, we just know that you're here. And you're going to get us through, because you are the way. In John chapter 1, verse 1 through 5. In the beginning was the Word, And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it. The darkness has not overcome. If you leave with anything today, it's that the darkness has not overcome. Jesus still is the light and the life of your life, if you only choose it. And that is what I leave you with today. Thank you.